Yeah,
We've had to go live everywhere. So
you're live now.
live in effect.
That's
Oh
correct.
man.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so Polka Dot Rabbit podcast. Hey y'all, appreciate y'all coming back.
Hey,
Took a some things changing with the Polka Dot Rabbit podcast, and y'all gonna see very soon in the near future. Some developments are happening in which we're trying to take things to the next level. And I appreciate everybody, honestly, that's been very supportive in what I've been doing. Like I told people before, I like doing this. This is fun talking to great guests. People I've known for years, people I just met. It's a beautiful thing just to be able to really vibe and talk about some subjects and share the information. And Polka Dot Rabbit podcast, we're here to uplift humanity, and this is a specific melanated music episode. So I know y'all been seeing this. We don't call it black rock. We don't call it that. We call it I call it melanated music. You know what I'm saying? Because want to kind of differentiate um, and talk about the soul and the power behind the music. The melanated music. So this is the melanated music episode with a very of course. If you haven't already, please go to polka.rabbitpodcast.com and pick up my book, uh, Bicultural Living and Leaving the World of Illusions. Um, that's it for me. You know what I'm saying? And I'm going to let my guest, I've known this brother a very long time, is an amazing human being, amazing individual, and an amazing drummer on top of that, an amazing musician, amazing teacher. We're going to get into all of that. Mr. Greg Washington, please go ahead and tell, um, just tell the people who you are, what you do, and et cetera, et cetera.
okay, cool. Thank you for that introduction. My name is Greg Washington. I reside here in Atlanta, Georgia. Uh, I'm a drum instructor. I'm a drummer also. I've been playing for over about 20 years, and I have a couple of people who I've recorded with here since I've been in Atlanta. Had the pleasure of working with a lot of really good people, good artists, and a lot of different genres. A little bit of background for me, unlike black musicians, I most black musicians that you talk to start out in church, and I start out in church. But as far as playing and performing, um, as far as full band and playing drum set, for me, I played in rock bands. So I did some performance in high school where it was like concert bands and marching band, but more for me it was more so like playing in rock bands. So I kind of took the backwards route. I kind of got into the gospel R&B type things later, but started a lot, a little bit R&B, gospel, some jazz here and there, reggae music. So I've worked with artists of pretty much all these genres. So it's been good. Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, we kind of got
Oh, there we
contact
go.
back.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. All right.
Go ahead. I got you. You talking about you started playing
Uh,
rock instead of
yeah.
in church.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm okay. We may have cut off during that time, but I since I've been in Atlanta, I've been able to play with a lot of different genres of music. From rock to reggae, to gospel, a little bit of jazz, and play with artists of all those different genres. And plus, in addition to that, I do teach drums. So I'm a drum instructor here in Atlanta, and I teach students of all ages. And I've been able to work with students and help them in many areas as well.
Excellent. And oh my God, Greg, I can't even think about how when what I'm saying we linked up, man. I'm just thinking like, was it the IGA days? Was it back in those days? IAG days?
I think it was IGA. I think it was
IGA, IGA, IGA,
IAG. IAG. It was
IAG.
IAG.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was IAG. And I think I got it fixed for that later. It was the IAG, International Artists Guild. And I remember, uh, I think I remember when you guys first came on the scene. Actually, because I remember seeing you guys play, and then a lot of good stuff, a lot of conscious lyrics in your music as well. When you guys were out doing your thing, which was good. Let
Yeah.
me get this. One second.
Yeah, that was a,
Yeah.
a, a Mulnan. Yep. We met up in the Mulnan days. You're right.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That was good stuff right there, man.
Yeah, that
And
was fun, man.
but interesting enough, like seeing you guys kind of reminded me of my first band because again, when I started playing, I started out playing rock. Like my first band was a like a hardcore, more like punk type band.
Hmm.
And we were in Alabama playing around a lot. So we did a lot of shows. And the cool thing about that is that it was cool to be a part of actual being a part of a scene. So
Hmm.
you were a band, and then there were other bands playing, and then you would link up with these different types of bands, and we had a good relationship with the club owner. It was just more like of a community oriented type
Yeah,
thing. Um, when I got to Atlanta, there is some of that, but it's just a little bit different being in a
yeah, it's
different city.
different.
Because I mean, my hometown where I'm from, it's like the club owner would actually go around promoting the shows. He would go around town putting up flyers. We give him flyers, and he give us flyers. Everybody would help each other out, and we put up flyers around town. And it was just that relationship that we had with the people there. And other bands hung out together.
Yeah,
So it was it
yeah.
was it was just really cool, man. That
That's what
happens somewhat here, but not as much.
that was very similar to the scene when I was in Richmond, Virginia, starting off. That was
Yeah,
very similar to same exact way. But minus the promoters didn't really go out and promote at the different venues, but they at least gave everybody the opportunity, to really get in front of big bands. You know what I'm saying? And really, you the sky was the limit as far as in that
yeah.
area. You know what I mean? So a lot of people don't get that opportunity. So I definitely see what you're coming from.
No, they don't. They don't. And again, it's a thing to where um, just having that base of where you just have you can go to that is really cool.
Hmm.
Um, and I just remember a lot of the bands we used to play with then too around that
Hmm.
time. It was just a cool time, man. Really
Yeah,
good time.
I as you as well. You know what I'm saying? It was like interesting because I wasn't used to the Atlanta scene. Kind of threw me off. In all
Got some
honesty,
really
you
good
know what I'm
memorable
saying?
shows as well.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. The Atlanta scene threw me off actually because I was used to the scene in Richmond, and when I came to Atlanta, it was like, it's just all different places spread all over the place, and it took me a while to understand what was going on, but it
yeah,
took me years, in all honesty. But actually, when I started to meet you, people like Larry Canito, and I
yeah.
started to see all y'all kind of showed me the Atlanta scene, it started making more sense. But I was confused for a while, in all honesty.
Yeah, right. Because well, when for me being in Atlanta, like the first month I was here,
Hmm.
I was able to link up with the band, and I was with that band for about a 4 year run.
Hmm.
And so through that band, that's how I ended up working with a lot of different people that was able to work with,
Hmm.
and able to network with some people. And I've come across since I've been with that band, I've still been come across with paths with a lot of those people that I came across when I was working with those guys. So um, and so when I was in Alabama, I was in an all black rock band, and then as
Hmm.
soon as I got here, I was an all black rock band as well. And I remember like looking in the Creative Loaf and it said all black rock band looking for a drummer. I was like, okay, well, that's me. And then so it's like I got in that band. I was with them for 4 years.
What band was that?
EX Vortex.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's what we met.
yeah, man.
That's what we met,
Yeah,
man. Yeah,
yeah,
that's what EX
yes,
Vortex.
sir. Yeah,
I think
yeah.
if that's the case, then it was probably a little bit. It would have been the Apache. That's probably where we linked up at the Apache because
Okay.
that's the first time
Well,
I saw EX Vortex.
I remember we played a show at before it was Apache, it was Yin Yang,
Yin Yang.
and
Yeah,
we
yeah,
did a
yeah,
show. I was for NDRE. NDRE was a headliner
yeah, yeah, yeah.
at that time. This is before she got big, and it was NDRE, and because I remember that very vividly. Uh, it was three acts on the show. It was Kebby Williams, and at that time, now he goes by the name of Key now, but he used to go by his former name, which was Woody Williams, his brother. So they were on the bill, and then India Arie was a headliner. And at the time, it was like she was doing shows with just her and her acoustic guitar. And so that was a really good night. That was a really good night, man.
That was
it was a good
early
show too.
2000s. The early 2000s.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I still have the flyer from that show. I still have the flyer from that show. ES Vortex, Kebby and Woody Williams on the flyer, and then India Arie. I still have that flyer.
EX Vortex, man, that was a dope band, man. Like, well, I think when I saw y'all perform, it gave me a lot of hope, for like a band like a Monon or Black Rock band to have a place to play in Atlanta. You know what I mean? Because, because we were playing a lot of different places around Atlanta, and we didn't really find our niche until it was like the Apache and different places like that.
Right.
Because some places, as you know, in Atlanta, the further you go out, the less, it's accepted. You know what I'm saying? So we experienced some of that as well. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So that was a dope band. So I want to backtrack a little bit. Okay. So I want to talk about living in Alabama and how did you even get into music?
Hang on one
Can you hear
second.
me?
Your audio is.
I think yeah, no, I hear you on IG, but it looks like your laptop is buffering. Is buffering. You want to go out and come back in? Yeah, you can go out and come back in. Yeah, just come back in. You're fine. Just come back in. Press the link. Come back in. You'll be fine. Yeah. I'll bring you back in. Yeah, it happens all the time. There's no big deal. Yeah, let's see. There you go.
Back in there. Good.
Yeah, it happens all the time. No worries.
Okay, good. So you were saying about bands like us and inspired you.
Oh yeah. Okay, so you didn't hear that. Okay, cool. So yeah, when I saw ES Vortex and I was like seeing y'all play at the Apache and just the reception y'all get, I was like, yo, like it was very positive. It motivated us because we knew there was a scene to play in. You know what I mean? And as opposed to because we were, like I was saying earlier, we were trying to play
Yeah.
a lot of different places. And the further we would go out, the less it was kind of receptive as, a black rock band playing, you know what I'm saying? Because you know how once you go outside of Georgia, different
Gotcha.
areas so, but once we stayed in Atlanta in that little pockets, the Apache Cafe and some of these the what's the other place? The Earl, not the Earl. What's the other place that the dive bar that remember the dive bar that got torn
529.
down? Huh?
Oh, Echo Lounge.
No, the one that was oh God, what was the one? It's a little filthy dive bar that was right off of where the train tracks is, where the MARTA station is. Oh, what is the name of it? You know what I'm talking about. It's that
Nine
little
Live,
dive bar that everybody
Nine
played
Live,
at. But anyway,
Nine
they
Live
tore it
Saloon.
down.
What
They
part
tore
of
it
town
down.
was it in?
It was right near Edgewood. It was like one block Edgewood going.
Oh, Lenny.
Lenny's. There you go.
Lenny's.
Lenny's.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know
Lenny's.
what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So like Lenny's.
yeah. Lenny's was cool, man.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. So once I saw y'all and met like the people in the scene, I started finding about these different places because that's when literally I came down in '99. So 2000 on, I was just trying to figure
Yeah.
stuff out. And that's when I saw ES Vortex. I was like, yo, they dope. I'm gonna rock with it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's interesting you because for me it was like I was really accustomed to just kind of being in those circles, man. So it's like I
mhm,
kind of knew how to kind of gravitate in those types of things. Um, so even with hooking up with those guys, I just knew where to look, within a month I had hooked up with them, So it was one of those things to where like, um, you know, even coming from where I'm from, just being so submersed in that the rock scene there,
mhm,
and then
mhm.
coming to Atlanta, it's like you just kind of know how to kind of just flow with it because you got kind of certain things I would look for it. So as far as and as far as shows go, I mean, we would pretty much play with pretty much for the most part, we just try to find bands that kind of similar to what we were
Yeah,
doing back then, and that's what kind of makes things challenging when you're playing with a band that um you plays with a band that the style may not necessarily be the style that you do, but you just make the best of it.
yeah, 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 yeah. And and it exposes you to other audiences when those bands come in. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
I know we were just talking about earlier when I did the interview with Dirty Wall from Fishbone, and
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, and just thinking about, I mean, even in that conversation when he said he said him jokers went on tour with the Beastie Boys and Murphy's Law.
yeah.
I mean, you know,
Well, I there was a tour they did with they were out with De La Soul and Goody
I remember
Mob.
that they did Goody
Yeah,
Mob. Yep, I remember that. Yep,
yeah,
yep, I remember that. You know what I'm
and they
saying?
were
So perfect example, though. You know what I'm saying? Just being able to be open your audience to your type of music and new people from different genres coming to check y'all out. You know?
yeah, because even with like the ES Vortex, I mean, we were doing like backup, like we were the backup band for like a lot of poetry events.
Yeah,
So we're
yeah.
doing this poetry thing, and we're like the backup band. We rehearse with all the poets. They would come through, they rehearse, and then next thing you know, we got a show, and then we're doing the show with all these like poets and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Some of those folks were very memorable.
Yeah,
Some
I
of
can
those
imagine.
poems, some of those poems that they had, man, were like, okay, well, this is what's happening. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
you taking me back to the Apache days and some of the poetry nights. You know what I'm saying? So let's go back now. I'm gonna backtrack. Tell me about growing up in Alabama and like how did you even get into music? How did you get into punk rock?
It's a good
How
question.
did that?
Well,
Yeah.
well, it started with me like I guess it started in uh, middle school, I guess. Um, Probably like the group of friends that I started hanging around,
Hmm.
and then like I was into skating a lot, like skateboarding and stuff.
Hmm.
And then so kind of going to that, it's kind of like as far as the
Yeah.
culture, and maybe some music would come along with that as well. So there was a lot of bands that I would listen to that would be associated with that. Um, so I got pretty much heavy into that as far as music, and then like a lot of the magazines with a lot of bands in there. They had
Hmm.
like a lot of photo outs and stuff like that. It's like for some reason I was just identifying with like a lot of those rock bands that were doing
Yeah.
that thing. I was like, I want to do that. And probably the reason why that because maybe that was part of my peer group. And at the time, one of the people in my peer group had a brother who was in a popular band around that time,
Hmm.
and they were playing out and stuff. And so I was like, and so he was saying he wanted to form a band. You kind of in the group. You like, well, I want to be a part of the band too.
Yeah.
And then so I was thinking like, well, what instrument would I play? And I was like, well, I said I would just play drums. I would play
Hmm.
drums in the band. So
Hmm.
it kind of started from there. So my whole motivation for playing drums was like I always wanted to be in a band. I always wanted to perform.
Yeah.
That's what it was for me.
Hmm.
So kind of going through that middle school stage, and then later on, I remember I heard something like "Cult of Personality." I said, "That's a cool song."
Yeah.
I didn't know who was singing. I just thought it was
Yeah.
cool. That as somebody was telling about "Living Color," I was like, "Okay." I saw him. I was like, "What?"
Yeah. Yeah.
I was like, "Wait a minute!" And then like, okay, then it really started right there. And then so from there, it kind of like, okay. I mean, I can tell you pretty much like a good bit of the Will Calhoun licks
Yeah, yeah.
that he does,
Mhm.
because I've seen a lot of their performances. Because I
Mhm.
used to like record like a lot of those performances that he was doing. That would be on like Arsenio or like Saturday Night Live,
Mhm.
stuff like that. And I would record all the stuff, and I would just watch those videos over and over again,
Mm.
over and over again. I would study, and I would hear the recording, and I would hear the live performance and things like that. And I was like, man, it's like, and I would just kind of study the style. And so what ended up happening was what I noticed about Living Color also is kind of interesting thing is like, okay, you would have a cassette version and you would have a CD version. The
Mhm.
guitar solos on cassette version were different than guitar solos on the CD version.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
On the I don't know
Uh-huh.
if anybody noticed that, but that's
Yeah.
yeah, it was anyway. That's anyway. So then later on, when I got to like my second year of like when I was in like junior college, that's when I met my friend Arthur. And
Mhm.
so I remember like we were like the student like life lounge or whatever. And then I met one guy that was JD, and he was a guitarist. And I was like, I'm gonna,
Mhm.
because I hadn't even had drums. I didn't get drums until like later. So until like I was like in college. So it's like
Mhm.
I met Arthur, and then I met JD first. He played guitar, and we kind of talked about being in the band. I said I'm gonna give me some drums. And the next thing you know, it's like I met Arthur, and he had this little book that it was like it was a like a scrapbook he put together,
Mhm.
and the scrapbook it had rock and roll is black music, and it
Mhm.
had like a red, yellow, black, and green
Mhm.
colors on it.
Mhm.
And then it was a flip book, and he had these cutouts,
Mhm.
and all these cutouts had all the black people in rock music, and he
Mhm.
had this book, and he would add to it all the time. I was like, man,
Mhm. That's dope.
I didn't know who these people were, man,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
he knew he had all these people. When he would flip the pages, I was like, I mean, went from Jimi Hendrix, Line of Family Stone. He had Fishbone, Bad Brains, 24/7 Spies.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, even like they were. I mean, like all there was stuff that he knew about that I didn't even know about. Like,
Yeah.
uh, you ever heard of a band called Proper Grounds?
Uh-uh.
See, Sinister. You ever heard of Sinister Dane?
Yes.
Okay,
Mhm.
stuff like that. What's
Mhm.
a band called I and I,
Mhm.
uh, and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
I would find out about this stuff from him, and then like I would borrow a couple of recordings from him, like might get this Fishbone from him, or this because I pretty much had out Living Color stuff, but like Fishbone or some of that 24/7 Spies, and I was like, man, this is really cool.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how I got started. And then so we got together and we formed a band, and me, Arthur, JD, and there was another our bassist at Julius, and so we had our band. So we were playing in Alabama for a while, man, and we our first few shows, they were you know they were challenges to get through, but after a while, man, we got pretty tight, man. We got
Yeah.
really tight, really good, like
What
really
was the
good.
name of that band?
Interesting, you should ask. Now, I'm going to tell you the name of the band. It wasn't my idea, but I just kind of went along with it. Okay. So
Uh-huh.
the name of the band was called Sucking Diction.
Okay.
Okay. That was the name of the band. And
Okay.
basically, that was a play on words
Mhm.
because diction, dictionary,
Mhm.
you know.
Mhm.
And so the thing about it was like this the guy who came up with the name, like the I guess the founder of the band, he was one of those kind of like he was like a deep thinker, like a deep
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
writer.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
some of
yeah.
the things he would write would really be like, wow. And he would come up with these like concepts of certain things like that. So when he came up with that particular name, I was like, well, you see, I hesitated to tell you the name
Yeah, yeah,
still
yeah,
to this
yeah,
day.
yeah, yeah.
But it's one of those things to where like, you know, we were just on a flyer. I mean, that's kind of what it is. I remember we did a show. There was us, and there was an all girl band out of Florida, and that band was name was was Clitoris Rex. So you got Sucking Diction and Clitoris Rex on the flyer, and it was some other band. But there were a lot of bands with crazy names back then. Like one band was called, the Vomit Spots, which is a punk band. Mm-hmm. Which is actually a pretty known band there as well. So it's like, but you weren't forgetting our name if you said the name, it'd be like, oh wow,
Yeah.
But we were like really hardcore, man. I mean, we were really like, if we had probably come to Atlanta, I don't know what would have gone on, man. I was like, if we were in a different city,
What was the sound? What was the sound like? If you can,
it was like early Rollins band, and like so when Henry Rollins first left, was it with Black Flag?
Black Flag,
yeah. When he left Black Flag and his early Rollins stuff, and kind of like the Melvins.
So it was thrashy and groovy.
Yeah. I remember we did a show one time and somebody said, y'all sound like hardcore power group funk. This was just some random person in the crowd, But the thing about it was, for the most part, when drummers play like punk music, they kind of play what we call a straight beat, which is like that. And I used to listen to a lot of hip hop. So I would try to put that hip hop influence in there. So if a riff would be played, I wouldn't try to play the regular straight beat type thing. I'm going to play something that's more funky, more like I'm going to kind of do something kind of a little bit offbeat, maybe syncopated.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Different.
I know exactly.
And so I'll take stuff from from people like DJ Premier and other hip hop, maybe some New York hip hop type stuff that I would listen to that would influence like some of the stuff I do. Now, some of the stuff I would play a straight punk beat, but some of the stuff I would just kind of switch it up. And then I used to also listen to a lot of jazz. So a lot of like Max Roach and Art Blakey type stuff I would listen to. So I might put that into some of the stuff I was doing as well.
Yeah, no, I always liked when drummers, I'm gonna tell you a band that really metal specifically, that the drummer I thought did a really good job with showing his hip hop influence in the music, and that was actually the drummer for Korn.
Okay.
Yeah, because that was, if you listen to that, Korn was, all that. What's
I'm
that
thinking.
What's that? What rock?
I'm thinking
what
like
rap rock. Yeah, the rap rock.
I think it's called rap rock. I'm thinking like the drummer that they have now. I think it's Ray Luzier.
Yeah,
I don't know if
that's the new drummer.
I'm not sure if that's the original.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah,
he's the original drummer.
No, he came later.
Yeah, he came later. I thought so. I thought.
Because the first one actually had 808s on his kit, so he'd be playing. Boom, the whole thing, everything, the lead guitar, the way that they played. Well, anyway, not go too far into that, but I always love hearing that when drummers just don't play the normal type of punk beats. Even adding the jazz,
exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Even adding the jazz elements, playing with cymbals and hi-hats, because it's in punk, there's like a formula of playing drums. It's like, you do rides, you do fast, what I'm saying? There's like a formula, but I always love to hear people playing heavy music that broke outside of that.
Yeah. I guess one example, I don't know if you maybe not say the best example. Well, kind of that, Bad Brains a little bit,
Yeah.
Because it was like they would do it. I mean, a lot of stuff would be standing straight punk music, but some of the stuff Earl was doing when he would play punk would be like a little bit different. Like wait a minute.
A good example would be like the Eye Against Eye album.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example, because like you listen to that and you're like, is this even a punk band? Is this a hardcore band? Because it's just like,
I remember the first time I heard how low can a punk get, and there's a guy back in the day. He had this tape, this cassette, and the cassette had like this what called the punk rock tape. So it had all this punk rock stuff on it, right?
Punk rock.
And so I didn't know what it was, and interestingly, it had like stuff like circle jerks on there and some other punk rock stuff on there.
Mm-hmm.
And interestingly enough, because some of the recordings on there were excerpts from the movie. There was a documentary. You ever heard of this documentary called "The Destruction of Western Civilization"?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've never seen it, but I'm familiar with it. I know it's like a punk rock documentary.
Yeah.
And so I just remember hearing "How Low Can a Punk Get?" I was like, yeah. But then later on, this is like, this is back like like doing like middle school days or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, like not this is like maybe like second 30 year out of high school, I heard Bad Brains and I heard How Low Can a Punk Get? I was like, wait a minute, that's the same group.
Yeah.
And I had no idea that was Bad Brains.
Yeah.
I had no idea there was brothers doing that, man.
Yeah, the thing that always got me about Bad Brains was I'm not talking about their like eye against eye. It was the speed and the intensity of Earl and just how fat and the technicalities of that. Because if you're a musician and you listen to Daryl play bass, sitting there playing chords and octaves and stuff, you're like, how are you playing chords and octaves over punk music? You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I mean, I could go all night talking about the Brains, but
well,
I think because Earl did he recorded 3 of our albums on the last Moulin album.
Oh yeah,
he produced, I should say.
Okay, cool, sure man. Did. That's cool. I think they have like all those guys at Bad Brains. From what I understand, they have like a jazz kind of, or maybe like a different. They come from a different background music wise, and it's interesting how they kind of got to be more eclectic in terms of that genre because they all went to. They saw Bob Marley and then they converted to Rastafarianism. And this is before the documentary. See, I knew about this back then. Like even back when I was in Alabama, like there was a lot of stuff that and one of the guys was saying that I heard that back even before the documentary came out.
Yeah. That's if people go to my if people go Bob Marley, happy you brought him up because he was a huge influence of mine. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Humongous. Because I used to listen to him back in the day, but I met Bob when I was starting to become conscious. You know what I mean? Not physically met him, but I met his music.
Like, what?
I was introduced to his music, I should say.
Yeah.
When I started becoming conscious, it's so crazy because that's when I was like smoking weed, and I was like, damn, I'm smoking weed. Now, is it the weed that's waking me up, or is this his music, or is this his books I'm reading? You know what I'm saying? But I remember like when I lived in Richmond, just driving around, listening to that album Survival, just smoking on a blunt, whatever. And I just remember it just felt like the music was up and it just felt like Bob was sitting right next to me, just like, yo, you know what I'm saying? Like, yo, wake up, you know what I'm saying? That was the type of influence that music had on me, you know what I'm saying? So, that's why.
It's interesting you should mention that. It's interesting you should mention that. My introduction to reggae music was in middle school. I had an art teacher, right? And she would go to Jamaica and she would come in and she would play a lot of reggae music. So a lot of the stuff that they were talking about in the music, she would educate us on that stuff. Like, and the interesting thing about this is what I discovered is like I have a couple of friends who are from Jamaican friends.
Yeah.
And when they're really heavily into reggae. Some stuff that they don't even know about and they're from there. So it's like two of the Jamaican friends I'm thinking about in particular, they've never heard of Lee Scratch Perry.
Yeah.
They don't know who he is.
There.
They don't know who he is.
Yeah, I don't know how you couldn't, not being in Jamaica, know music.
I mean, and or something like because of the other people, they would come to me and tell me that what this stuff was, like what Bob Marley actually meant when he would say these things, and these weren't Jamaicans, these weren't black folks, these were white folks saying this, like, this is what he means. And like, man, they know more about it than we knew. And they know about the people who are from Jamaica, which was interesting. So, but I appreciate the education because now I know, and I can tell them, but yeah, it's really interesting. But she would tell us about a lot of stuff. I mean, like she was the one. I mean, I got hip to like she would always play reggae when we were like doing art and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like Bob Marley. She also talked about Bob Marley. Third World.
Third
She
World,
always just play Third World in there. Now that we found love, and the whole bunch Peter Tosh, like all this stuff she would play. Now, kind of getting back to the rock thing, Peter Tosh used to tour with the Rolling Stones.
He sure did. Mick Jagger was his homie.
Yeah.
And funny enough, Mick Jagger is the one that gave Living Color there. He's the one that gave
exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Sure did. Yep. Sure did. And he kind of gave them a start and kind of went on from there, man. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that whole aspect of just the how music can really move you, because oh, and I was going to say this earlier, is that if people go back to my YouTube page, you'll see like I literally this year made a pilgrimage to his mausoleum in a 9 Mile. You know what I'm saying? Bob Marley.
You cut out. Pilgrimage to where?
To 9 Mile, his mausoleum. You know where he's resting. Bob Marley's resting. Can you hear me?
Okay, got you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I went out there. That was literally like a pilgrimage for me. Man, I ain't gonna front. I cried, man. They were playing this little music stuff. I cried like a baby, man. Just being there, and because he was, that's how important he was. Like, as a musician, and just like I felt as though he was one of the ones that really assisted in my awakening. Years ago. You know what I mean, through his music, and just the power. That's when I really understood started understanding how powerful music is when it's done correctly. Because I read some stuff back in the day. They said that when Africa Unite came out with Zimbabwe and all that, is that the album came to Africa, and the people in the white people, the colonizers, they took the albums and they would cut out the songs that were like, they would ban the songs by slicing them with razor blades in the albums.
I think I may have heard that, but then again, I may not have heard that. That's.
But even just the history between the stuff he was, music like that is other music. Public Enemy, like you said earlier, a whole bunch of, we can go on and on, but the power of music when it's not weaponized like it is now, what I'm saying? That's a powerful. I remember Bobby Hemmett one time. Bobby Hemmett was saying that Bobby Hemmett was he was saying that back in the day, how Black people, when they were listening to soul music, they were able to heal themselves through the music because of tones and frequencies. They put on soul music, and they, they would start to feel better, and they'd start to heal themselves because of the music. So once that they realize that, so they start digitizing.
There's right. There's an interesting science to that, because also, if you think during that time, like, well, there's a whole like maybe like a nerd conversation around that, but like, long story short, digital versus analog.
Yeah.
The frequencies, the warmer frequencies in the music, and it was a richer tones inside of the music. Even when they recorded the Thriller album, they had the Thriller album. The first cut didn't make it because the grooves on the record, in order for the maximum quality to come through, the length had to be a certain length. So they had to cut the songs down to a certain length, so it can be under this amount of time. So when they would play it on a record, it would have a certain richness to the sound. Because if you have too many audio minutes on that record, it's going to diminish the sound quality. So, and that's part of, Thriller became one of the biggest selling albums of all time.
It's like a science project. It's like a science project. Like it's
because there's
alchemy
frequency. And,
did you ever hear?
Go ahead.
No, I was just kidding. Did you ever hear the story about how Eddie Van Halen got on to Beat It? Did you ever hear that story?
I don't know how No, well, I think I have, but you can remind me real quick. But there is an interesting story about.
I heard about it, but then I went to. Like you said, I'm a music nerd, just like you are. So I'm gonna tell you. I was telling Larry on the interview before, like if I'll be trying to find stuff out. I'll do the research. I Google it. I go to YouTube. But um, he, the band Van Halen, they never wanted to play with anybody else, like guest solos. They were just like Van Halen, and what happened was is Eddie Van Halen, everybody was like out, I guess on vacation or something, and the request came to him, so he really couldn't ask the rest of the people to do it. So I think it was Quincy Jones or whatever, reached out to him. You know what I'm saying? It was like, can you be on this album? He was like, sure. You know what I'm saying? So he went. He did Beat It.
Well, now there's a story about him playing the solo on Beat It. Now,
Mm-hmm.
according to the story, the way it goes, according to the engineer,
Mm-hmm.
he says that when he's playing the guitar solo in the studio,
Mm-hmm.
and like he's hearing it, and it's sounding really good.
Mm-hmm.
It got so good to where the monitors caught on fire.
Oh, dang.
He said the studio monitors caught on fire in the studio.
Dang.
That's according to the engineer producer guy. So,
Yeah, that's what my man Timbo's like. He said, "Yep, on MJ Beat It." I never heard that. I mean, but
it's on YouTube.
Yeah. I mean, that album, just everything, pretty much, especially that time frame Michael Jackson did. It was like, no wonder. See, we're older now because we just saw him as a pop star then. You know what I'm saying? We like, we can now I can really appreciate the musical aspect of it. I remember seeing Michael Jackson. I think it was We Are the World, right? And they were all singing, right? And Cyndi Lauper and all these people like Huey Lewis, and they're all singing, and they all off tone, all singing whack. And you can seeing him like, man, y'all, you know what I'm saying? I gotta sing next to this. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And just watching him. I remember Beat It, the video itself. One of the dudes was a choreographer, that was in the video. The one with the knife, the white shirt on with the knife, that was dancing.
Mm-hmm.
That was the choreographer. But you watch the video, Michael Jackson dancing better, choreographer, he dancing better than everybody, and singing. It's like, I became the older I got, the more and more I realized that cat was like one of the illest cats out there, like ever. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you got to think also. I mean, he was really immersed in it, man. I mean, like that's he lived and breathed that the whole time. So it's like when you do it so much and repetitive to where it's like you it's not even like it's not what you do is what you are.
What you are, yeah.
And so when you're on that level, it's just like that's just what you are. Then it's a thing to where like, well, that's kind of like that kind of divine level of being when it comes to that doing that thing, and which is why you have people that ascend to that level. And it's interesting you should mention that because you got people like Michael Jackson, Prince, and as I always think about like, well, who is that person now that has that there's some good talent out there, but in terms of like somebody who's like so immersed to where like that's what they are, it's kind of I have to take a little bit more time to think about that.
The question is, and we can kind of talk about this, where in the way music is now, how would even an individual like be like that receive now as opposed to in the past? You know what I mean? Because it's just so many.
Well, I'll
go ahead.
Well, I'll say this. Just from my observation, I can only speak from my observation. Those people exist, but from what I've seen, those people are more like underground. They're not like at the forefront.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the people that you see at the high level, they're more like, I would say they're more like made, because it's one of those things where like it's like you were saying, it's like you were saying, this is the litmus test. Michael Jackson, you said his choreographer, right? Because you got the main person on stage, and and you say he was out doing the choreographer, right? Okay, so same thing. if you put him somewhere, you pretty much put him anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Even he's not that he's has to be in this environment to perform. It's pretty much that's just what he can perform anywhere.
Yeah.
So that type of individual, we can take that individual and then put them in like this other type of situation where it's like a maybe like a local club, small
Mm-hmm.
club type thing or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and they can still have that impact in that
Mm-hmm.
environment.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things to where I've seen to where like there'll be maybe one artist that might be, you know, like this, really big time, but then the artist gets with somebody who actually is about that, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I know
And
exactly.
they may kind of shy away from it. They may do a
Mm-hmm.
little bit, but that person, if that person will outdo them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
one of
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
things where, like, as far as the it factor, is who is that person now? And like I
Mm-hmm.
said, for right now, from what I can see, most of those people they're not really at the forefront; they're more underground.
Yeah. 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 I know. I know exactly what you're talking from because and it still it's kind of going into the where the music scene is. Like I was having a conversation. Oh no, we were talking about. But I was telling you before how I was. I remember when I recorded all everything I recorded from 1995 on forward. All the musicians took a lot of pride and time in getting specific tones they were looking for, specific. They reverb had a sound away, but their delay pedal had a sound right there. The guitar player, no, they didn't want to use Fenders. They want to use a dual rectifier. They want to use Mesa Boogie because they wanted to just down to the very small details to that sound. Just like I was telling you when we were talking on the phone earlier about how I specifically wanted to listen to that Smash's Pumpkins album
Yeah,
because that
because it
Billy
sounds.
Corgan guitar sound on that album sound like it's very unique and it's badass straight up.
Yeah,
So I can't even tell you if anybody even cares anymore to take the time to even hear that, you know what I'm saying, in
mhm,
music. I
yeah,
don't I don't know if it's there. I mean, besides musicians, I don't know if it's there.
yeah. That's really interesting, man. Because, like I said, that sound. I'm fortunate that uh, the people who I work with now, yeah, I've been playing with, they definitely take some pride in their sound,
Yeah.
and particularly one of the individuals who I play with, um, to get into later, but this metal band I play with, um, I mean, he really takes it a lot into
Hmm.
his sound. Like, I mean, if you see his rig, it's nuts.
Hmm.
It's crazy. But and I like the sound. I like that for the type of stuff we do. I like that particular type sound. That's very important, man. That's
Yeah,
very
I
important.
agree.
And so when it comes to that, was it's more for a drummer thing where like actually knowing how to tune and
Yeah.
knowing how to tune for what type of style of music. When I'm talking about drums now, but like
Hmm.
when you tune drums and like which sizes to use and things like that, that's very important, man.
Yeah.
That's very important.
Yeah. I read a book. I was telling you earlier. I read a Frank Zappa book, and
Yeah.
it was the one where he talked. It was a real good book because he was breaking down like how he pretty much found out how the industry ran. It was a whole bunch of stuff, but I
Mm-hmm.
got one of the big things that him and his wife. He found out how after he got a label, he found out how the whole music industry ran, and he shied away
Mm-hmm.
from the whole thing. And him and his
Mm-hmm.
wife did everything,
Mm-hmm.
booking, touring. Him and his wife, he like
Yeah.
they flip flop.
Right.
Like he would work during the day, and she would work during the night. So all the tours they did, all promotions they did, everything. So he owned all his masters, everything. But no, he went and he was just talking about how, like we were talking about now, it's just like he could have wrote a whole different book just as big on just guitar sounds, and I remember, I remember when that transition went from when Pro Tools
Mm-hmm.
came in, because bands like the Deftones, like they would play analog with all that equipment and it's drop it on the Pro Tools and edit that way. You know what I mean? And doing stuff like that at that time frame, it really was a that was like another shift, kind of like the analog we were talking about earlier. That was another shift with Pro Tools coming in, being able to
Right.
edit and do things differently, you know. So
Well,
go ahead.
yeah, that's the thing. Go ahead.
No, you got it. Go ahead.
Now that's just the thing now because I know some engineers have a thing to where like people are able to get to do a lot, on their own with the computer and some plugins as opposed to going to an actual studio. And the thing about it is that it's not going to be the same as going to the studio. But I think I may have mentioned before that how much of a difference is going to make for the average listener to where
Exactly.
they would know
Exactly.
that. The engineer knows
Exactly
that, but
right.
the average listener may not necessarily pay attention to it because the average listener could be like, oh man, that sounds good. You know,
I'll tell
I
you.
think,
Go ahead. I'm
uh,
sorry.
I
I'm
think
sorry. Go ahead.
some albums were, some songs that kind of went to be really popular were recorded on the smallest device or in somebody's bedroom or something.
Man,
So,
when we recorded that album with Earl, I'm gonna tell you something, man. When we recorded the bass didn't sound right. Okay,
mhm.
and we went over to Chris Griffin. You know Chris Griffin,
I
little
know
short.
Chris.
Yeah,
I know
yeah, yeah,
Chris.
yeah, yeah. So Chris recorded the 3 songs we did Earl, and he mastered all the 3 songs, everything. I think he did. I think he mixed and mastered the whole album. I think,
Hmm.
if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he did. So but what Chris did back then, he took the messed up recording, used his plugins, did his magic. You know what I'm saying? And the
Hmm.
bass sounded like it sounded perfect. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That's a prime example of, I guess how you can use the technology to not being lazy, but being able to manipulate it and for it to sound good for, a project.
And someone who knows how to do that too. Because some people don't necessarily have the know-how. They just may have some equipment, but they may not. They may this could maybe need a little training.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But yeah, that makes a huge difference in being able to do that,
yeah,
man. You got to
yeah.
have the know-how. You
Just
know.
just being around somebody that, even good example is Chris. Being around somebody that's just been around and knows music like that on that high level of being,
Hmm.
well, I think he did sound for Driving and Crying. He
Yeah,
did like
I
a
think he
couple
still
of
does.
yeah, he did, yeah. And then I just saw him at Kroger a little while ago. It's funny.
Yeah, he actually mastered a song that I had.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
took the song to it to get mastered. Yeah, he did a
Hmm.
great job with it too.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And but yeah, it's what I'm saying, like being able to sit down and work with somebody like that just has such knowledge behind it. Like you think you know something when it comes to music. Like
Man, I tell
you
you,
know what I'm
man, you
saying?
you you think man. You talk to somebody that these guys that's kind of like one of these wizards.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually,
Chris is a
got all
wizard. Chris is a
man.
wizard.
Yeah. You think but you don't know.
Yeah, 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 yeah. And and
But
and
I
then
mean,
being able to just articulate and explain
yeah,
what the difference is and etc. You're like, damn, I never really thought about it that way. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
So I use that as a learning opportunity as well, man. Because
Yeah.
it's like I'm a student,
Hmm.
and I'm really a student then because when they start sharing knowledge, man, that's valuable information. And I'm cutting straight to it and getting that information and applying it. And I've been fortunate to have people, that I've come into contact with that have given me when it comes to like music or mixing
Yeah.
sound things like that.
Hmm.
I've come in contact with really key individuals that really give me some really good things that have helped advance my sound tremendously in terms of like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
sound or recording or
Yeah.
just whatever. So I'm very thankful for that.
Speaking of big acts, since we talk about Driving and Crying and
Hmm.
live and all that stuff, I want to know the story about how you got on the Outcast track. How did that whole thing work?
Okay, so again, it goes back to when I was playing with the band EA's Vortex.
Hmm.
So, and this is interesting you should mention that because this is like probably like the third time that I've on record that I'm actually saying the story because somebody else has it somewhere else. They're gonna put it out.
Yeah.
I explained to somebody else, they're gonna put it out, and then so now I'm telling you it's the third time recording. So the way that happened was I was with the band ES Vortex, and so the singer, he had a lot of, he was connected. He had a lot of connections with a lot of different people. There's a lot of people he talked to, came into contact with, and so he stayed in contact with a lot of folks. So the A&R for that particular, I think it was Stankonia Records or Equipment Records or whatever. I got a phone call. I got a phone call. Basically, she was saying that Andre and Big Boy, they were looking for a band to come in that had been playing together for a while, and they want them to play some stuff on the album or whatever like that. So I remember I got the call because I was at work. So long story short, you get the call, then kind of work some things out to get down to the studio, get the drums down and everything like that. We meet Andre and Big Boy. So basically, the singer was connected with the A&R there, and so by that connection, and through, because he was always in people's face, I was in somebody's face, just kind of like, hey, speaking of the band, just trying to get whatever opportunity. He wouldn't type of person take no for an answer. He would always be like, always just kind of check in with folks. Very punctual, which is a very good quality. And so that's how we ended up doing it. And so when we got there, what ended up happening was like we met Andre and Big Boy, and they were like, okay, well, this is what we want. And we want, so I played on like a lot of those skits on the album. So the stuff like Drinking Again, the prenup, the intro to like the background music to Why and Silky, all that stuff. Like you hear percussion or this drum set, that's me playing on that. So they would say, okay, we want something like this. We want something to sound like more like a bluesy type thing, like somebody's sad, or we want somebody to sound like this or whatever. So we would be like, okay, and he would kind of give us like somewhat of a picture of what he wanted. We go there, we kind of brainstorm, put our heads together, and be like, okay, we'll come up with this. So we just went ahead and played the stuff, and then so we played it. We went through a couple of takes, and we're like, okay, it's gonna be like this. Got done with it. They cut it, played it back in the engineering room, and when they played it back, Andre in there and Big Boy were in there too, and everything we did, they liked what they heard, and they would just look at each other, smile, give each other a dap, and say break. So when you listen to the album, I remember listening to the album, and after every time that we did that, they would do that. So when you listen to the album, you would hear break between the and that's what they meant by that. That's what I guess they were thinking ahead as far as what they wanted to have between each one. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But that's what started right there. That's how the idea that it started. Then you hear it on the album.
Yeah, I always wonder why they always be saying break to the album. I thought it was cool. I thought it was dope. I was just like,
I think it was like I'm taking it was probably like an inside type thing. Just like you somebody you hang with, and then you have certain slang y'all use, and maybe only two you only use that. You can be your spouse, and then you and your wife, whatever. Then next thing you know, y'all have certain terms y'all use between each other, but only y'all know what y'all talking about. So it may have been the same thing with them, bands, same thing within the band or whatever. So I think that's where it came from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's the. So who else besides Outkast? What else was some of the bigger, bigger artists you perform with?
I got to some stuff with Chuck D from Public Enemy. Basically, the way that came about is that, give a little backstory. While what's interesting, man, this is kind of like bringing back some memories, because I remember when I first met Professor Griff, I think it was and Andre, and then when I met them, I was with the singer at VA's Vortex at the time, and I remember that this was at the anyway, I won't go into that, but I remember the singer saying we're going to work with them someday, and I was thinking like, okay, but we ended up working with them.
Yeah.
So and he had this idea for a while, because Terminator X came out with a solo album called The Valley of the Jeep Beats, and there was a single released off that album called Terminator X Buck Wallet. So the singer had the idea. It's like, well, instead of calling it Terminator X Buck Wilder, we're gonna call it EX Vortex Buck Wilder. So I guess he kept on going. I guess he met Chuck D and he, Professor Griff at the time. I mean, we would see Griff pretty frequently.
Yeah.
And then so he would talk with him about that idea, and through, I guess, a consistent effort over maybe 2 or 3 years, he finally got Chuck D to drop a verse on that album. So we did like the live band version of Buck Wilder, and we got Chuck D to come and drop a verse on it. So that's how that came about. Then it's interesting how that happened, because the day when Chuck D came to our studio, it was Chuck D and Killer Mike.
Mm-hmm.
So we got Chuck D and Killer Mike sitting on the couch in our rehearsal studio, and they're just chopping up with about for 30 minutes, just talking about music industry and kind of how you need to do this and your brand and all this type of stuff. So it was cool. So we got to hang out with them for a little bit. He came and dropped this verse, and he was out.
Yeah, man. It's always dope, man, to be those stories. I always love them, just through my personal experience and hearing brothers like you just share like your experiences, like knowing you should be there. You know what I'm saying? Which you should be.
Yeah.
So, what for the folks out there? What do you do now? Like, because I know you do you gig, but you also do drum lessons. So, what you got going on now? And so, like, if you are doing, and how can they contact you? If they're trying to link up with you for lessons.
I have my Instagram. My Instagram is Rocksteadygreg. Rocksteady Greg on Instagram. You can reach me there. But as far as what I'm doing now, I'm gigging. I do sessions, studio sessions or live sessions, and drum lessons. So I teach drum lessons this here at my teaching studio, and I have a couple of do not have another location where I teach, but I primarily teach here. And as far as what else I'm doing now, I do play out. Probably the band I'm most the busiest band I play with is a band called the Relics.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been playing out quite a bit. We've actually done some recording. We just had a new release we put out called Sunshine. So you can check that out on the Relics it's on Spotify, some other streaming links. But Spotify, you can look up the Relics. Like I've got a lot of our releases on there.
How you spell it?
The Relics, RELICS.
Okay.
The Relics. And then so I'm doing that. That's the main thing that's keeping me busy. And then also, as far as other people I'm playing with, probably the second most frequent project I'm playing with is a metal band. Now at the Relics is more like kind of classic rock Atlanta based band. Okay. But I play with a metal band. It's kind of a LA based band called Flake. So, and I kind of got a hold of them through like, I guess, online Craigslist or whatever. But the thing is, I've been playing with these guys for about maybe going on 2 years now. I mean, we've mostly doing rehearsing, and I actually stepped in and took the place of another drummer that was actually the drummer for that band. But when the guy relocated to this side, because the singer lives in South Carolina, the bass player lives in Orange County, and I live here. So we're a three-piece.
Oh, okay. Ooh.
So he, within the past few years, he relocated to South Carolina, but he was still doing stuff with the drummer out in LA. And the drummer actually ended up going on tour with the band called, some people may be familiar with the band called Pretty Boy Floyd.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, he's a known session guy out there. Okay. But they picked him up, so he's out on tour with that band. So I'm basically stepping in place for him.
So the band name is Flake.
Flake, Flake.
And they're from California.
They're based out of LA. But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
But you still might find them in LA because we've actually done a couple of LA shows, which the Orange County shows. We've done a couple of West Coast shows. My first shoot with the band were out there. So we've recently done a couple of shows here in Atlanta, and we're trying to wait on confirmation for a possible November show.
No, I just laughed because I think when you said Flake in California, I just thought of that Frank Zappa song Flakes. You know, I don't know if you know the song. I immediately thought about that. That's why I was laughing.
Okay. As far as some other stuff I do, I got a hip hop project that I'm working with on occasion because I do get calls for that. So I will recently doing a filming with this project called Beef and Broccoli. His brothers Haste Money and Willie Mack. As a singer and a rapper, more like hip hop R&B, but these dudes are really talented, man. I mean, this stuff is so good. I
That
mean, it's
sounds
really good
familiar.
music.
Why does that sound? The beef from Brock. Why does that sound familiar?
Uh, I
Yeah,
don't know.
I don't know.
It's a Chinese dish.
No, I mean music
But
wise, I don't know.
yeah,
I don't know. It just
but
sounds. It's
Haste
just a
Money and
Chinese
Willie
dish.
Mack, they're really talented guys, man. We just did a filming last week at this location here in Atlanta, so that's going to be out soon. It's kind of like a tiny desk thing, but it's more so out of it, like a small kitchen that we're doing it. And then I recently did something this weekend with this artist by the name of Kamara. It's more like R&B, and so we were at a private studio here in Atlanta, and we just filmed that this past weekend also.
I might have to
So I got
I
some.
might have to get you on board some of these new projects if you don't charge me too much.
Okay, well, we can talk about it. We can talk
Yeah,
about it.
give me the homeboy hookup.
Yes.
We can make some things happen.
We can talk about it. Yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. But yeah, man. Hey, man. Great talking to you, man. You know what I'm
For
saying?
sure.
We got to do it again. You know what I'm saying? And like I said, I'll be down in the A real soon. So I'm gonna hit you up. We're gonna build, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I've been on hiatus long enough. I've been on my little vacation long enough. It's time for me to get back at it. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, you got to get to it, man. You got to keep it going because one thing I realized when people step away, they always come back to it.
yep, yeah, exactly,
They
man. You're
always
right.
come back to
You're right.
it, man.
You're
And
right.
it's
You're
like,
right. Ain't no excuses, nothing now at this point. I'm ready to go, but we're gonna
that's good.
we're gonna make it happen. Everybody, you know what I'm saying? Again, Mr. Greg Washington, thank you so much for being here. You know what I'm
Yes,
saying? I
indeed.
appreciate your time. Appreciate you just being a wonderful individual and a human being. We need to clone a lot more of you, you know what I'm saying? And put you around the planet, you know what I'm saying? Maybe we can get this place balanced with good folks and good energy.
I
Besides
appreciate
that, yeah, indeed, man. This your brozo here, Polka Dot Rabbit podcast. All I can say is peace and love, and stay tuned because we got some. Y'all gonna see me more frequently. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, once I come back to the A, we're gonna take things to a whole new level, and y'all will see. Besides that, we out of here. Peace and love.
Peace. All right.